This is lesson 2, modeling the Kallman McKinnell building at School Street. I'm going to deal with now floors, and we understand from these drawings that we're looking at that there are, let me change the visibility graphics of the imported elevation drawing, which is this one. We did before. I'm just selecting all of this and making it a standout, assigning it a standout color of green value to the line work there. So that's it in green, and then all of the plan drawing, visibility graphics, imported categories for the base drawing, make it all I think we made it this ugly magenta. Okay? Okay. So there's the base drawing. There's this. So now we're going to talk about sort of a layout of the building, and we have what is a grid structure here. So I'm going to go to my level 1 floor plan. And start examining it from the point of view of this grid structure. So Revit architecture has, from the architecture menu, the ability to create grid lines which organize 3D elements. Right? There are datum objects that govern the relationships between elements. We're going to need them to draw in the columns and the items, the elements that occur at the intersections of the grid lines. So I'm just snapping to the grid lines that are here. And make sure that I'm drawing parallel. Yeah. To those, right? Click on that grid line again, make sure you can see both ends. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's others along here, so we'll have to call them 1A, 1B, whatever. Great, let's continue to draw 2. It's a little bit, it's sort of irregular, isn't it? The neat thing about grid lines is that we have to zoom in to make sure that we're aligning. There we go. Is that when you define them, you have to come up with a new number system here. 7 is going to be a new 1. There's something much different that's happening. This is these elements that are radially arranged. I'm going to draw these quickly and then drag them out to their extents. we have some horizontal ones now. This one is having a little trouble aligning. Okay, that's parallel. Let's drag that out. Let's rename this A. Click on both ends and drag out that end. So there's some imperfection in the drawing. It isn't lining up perfectly parallel. There's B, C, D, E appears to be perfectly horizontal. As does F. It isn't drawn, it isn't perfectly horizontal, but it is close. That'll be close enough. E. Click on both ends. C. Click on both ends to reveal the bubble at both ends. Both ends. B needs to drag out because it's the intersection of that column as well. C. Let's drag it out a bit more because there's a couple columns here that intersect. D is out sufficiently, but so I may not want to reveal that end of the bubble. I could turn it off, but for now, let's leave both ends on. So let's see what we're doing. And I think we've drawn all we need for grids. There's some intersections of some other grid lines here, but why don't we leave that out and just deal with 1, 2, 3, 4, this massive sort of columnar element at the front of the school street side of the building we'll model afterwards. Same is going on along this radial array of grid lines. There are vertical column elements that are holding up the building. Column, start with the round ones. Architecture column, choose the architecture column, not the structural ones. And if we don't have any round columns in the model, we'll have to load that family. So load family, columns, round columns. Those appear to be about 3 feet, I'm guessing. Architectural column, round column, 24. 24 is not big enough. Column, architectural column, round. Let's edit type and duplicate it and create a 36-inch diameter. 36 inch. diameter. Make it 3 feet. It's close enough. And I'm placing at the intersection. Note that it doesn't align perfectly to those intersections, but it will do. Columns are going, well, we'll talk about the top and base constraint of those columns. So I'm placing columns at the intersections of column grid that I traced from the AutoCAD drawing. These are we're gonna have to change those to square columns, but for now I'm just gonna place these round ones. There's nothing here, strangely. Well, let's create a massive, let's see if I can measure thickness, diameter. Those are 5-inch diameter round elements. So architecture, column. I'm going to edit type and duplicate this type and call this a 60-inch diameter column. Five feet, 60 inches. And I'm going to place. I'm aligning sort of to the CAD drawing. Notice how they quickly become embedded in the exterior wall. That's fine. That perimeter wall is provisional, and that's okay. And now we need something for the elements that occur at these intersections. I'm going to, for now, say that it's not quite, they're not round, they're elliptical, or there's some combination of half rounds and a rectangular in the center. But for now I'm going to create a round column that's 4 feet in diameter. So let's go to edit type, duplicate the 60-inch, and call this a 48. And that'll be our approximate column for these guys that occur outside the building. I could model that shape exactly, but for the purposes of prototyping the interior, that isn't necessary. Let's go to our 3D view and see what we have. So we're starting to get something that looks like the shape of the building. Right? There's other stuff going on in there. These columns are structural elements outside, which right now go from level 1 to level 2. Right? If we're looking at the actual elevation of the building, if I go to the what would it be? Southeast west elevation. East, south, north. That's what we use, in north. So in this north elevation, we created levels for the school street, for the Washington School Street intersection part of the building. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have columns now outside that part of the building. One of them is selected there. If I changed the top constraint of that column to go up to level 5, all of which are options here, That's what we have, right? So I'm going to select all of these. That one, that one, that one, that one, that one. Whoops. That one, that one, that one. And have the top constraint for those to go up to level 5. Right? Because they're outside the building, and the remainder of these, after I model the floors, I can just copy from floor to floor. And then I need, well, I should probably model this wall element, which is holding the whole thing up. So let me see if I can measure the thickness of that wall. I'm going to model it as a single thickness. Can I do it from here? 1.5 feet. Why not use that, right? Let's go to level 1 floor plan. Architecture floor. Wall, yeah. And that we have conveniently, our last wall is still location, line, finish, face, exterior, so I'm just going to model that wall. 2. Endpoints. Right? I know it isn't lining up exactly, but this provisionally, structurally, this is what we have. Let's go back to the 3D view. So, and those that wall system that we created probably goes up to level 5. So somehow, when we model level 5 and whatever the beam elements that extend from the top of these columns to the top of these walls, we have sort of the system in place. 17 minutes. Let's model the floor slabs for the 2 spaces. So we need an outline of the perimeter of the floor for both spaces. Let's go to level 1. And I think we can say somewhere there's got to be a drawing that explains the change in elevation, or you know exactly where it occurs. And I believe it occurs along this number 6 grid line. We can change that afterwards, but for now, if we accept that to be true, this is what the result would be. So I click on floor, and that brings us into sketch edit mode. I can pick lines that will create lines based on an existing perimeter, but I'm just going to draw it in this case. So I'm going to start the midpoint of that, the intersection, right, of the grid line with that wall. So I'm just drawing along that element till I meet that wall. Now, I'm aligning to the exterior face of this wall. I can modify that afterwards. It's not exact just yet, but we can later make modifications to it. Endpoint, 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 endpoint. Then finish, edit, and we have the shape of a floor slab. if I go to a 3D view, right, if I copy it to the clipboard, for example, and I say, paste a line to selected levels, and I know that that floor occurs on level 3, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the old building, and hit OK. I've created floor slabs there. Now, that may not be the case, but that's how we go about doing it, and then we can adjust that afterwards. So we know that at level 2 there doesn't really exist the floor, but there exists the outline of a couple of the mezzanine. So if I selected that slab and hit Edit Boundary, I could modify this sketch to say, okay, really, there's just, if I draw from here to there, and sort of delete the rest of these lines, I could use the trim tool to just sort of, okay, let's get rid of that. Let's trim from here to there. And just remove all the rest of these lines, because I don't need it because there's no floor there. You may wish to place a floor there afterward. So, and then when I finish edit that, always answer no to this. So that's telling me that now I have slabs on, a partial slab on level 2, and then 3, 4, and 5 we have a floor. Let's go to level 1 again and model the other side. And the other side is slightly higher elevation. Let's see if we established an elevation level for that floor. Did we do that? No, we didn't. We don't have a level. So we have a level 2. And we have to examine the drawing for that change, the change in elevation. For now, let me create an L3 old and say it's 48 inches above that. So I'm going to select an elevation marker, create similar, and call it L2 old. I'm creating a mess of views right now, many of which we don't need, but that's okay. So now if I go to this plan, this floor plan, and I start modeling a floor there, it'll create it at that elevation. So let me go to not ceiling plan, L2 old floor plan. And we want to create a floor, architecture floor. I didn't say this before, but we're accepting the default generic 12-inch thick floor. These slabs might be much thicker than that. We can adjust those afterwards. So let's outline now the floor. I think we made this the inside of floor level. So I'm going to start drawing from this intersection to there. endpoint. Structural floors are usually embedded, not necessarily that. We're just using the exterior face of wall as sort of the outline of the floor. Quickly create, and that completes the shape of the old building floor. Finish edit, back to a 3D view and see what we have. So we have a floor now that's at 48 inches. In the old part of the building, we'll need a stair that goes from this part to that part. If we copy that floor to the clipboard, and we say paste, align the selected levels, I could select levels. We drew it on level 2 old, so we're going to go to level 3 old, level 4, level 5, level 6, and level 7, and hit OK. So now we have the old floor slabs, the old part of the building. Right? At some place, they're coincident. Anyway, so that's lesson 2. I should say also the beauty of Revit that you can quickly cut sectional views of the building with the section box. So any of the 3D views that we have, you can also do it with section markers. But any of the 3D views, and this is what you do to do your cutaway views. I'm going to duplicate this default 3D view and click on section box, which draws a box around all of creation and allows me to take the faces of that box and move them in the inside of the building. So now I'm starting to get, sort of this sectional view of what I've modeled so far. So I got a good idea of what we're looking at in terms of building a model. We'll talk about refining this in the next lesson, starting the lesson.